Alright, we're back, of course, talking FF7 Remake Part 3. We're talking about the boy Vincent Valentine. Of course, we didn't get to play as Vincent Valentine when it came to Rebirth. That was a big disappointment. We knew that kind of early on, I think, last year when they really started marketing for Rebirth. They told us pretty soon that we wouldn't get to, control Vincent. He would just be kind of joining the party at some point in the game. It's obviously a bit of a letdown because I think a lot of us were looking forward to, using him because he has a very unique style in some ways compared to, the other characters. He uses a gun very similar to, Barrett, of course, but obviously the monster forms are exciting. What's that going to be like once we can actually use them? We didn't get to experience that with Rebirth. It does suck, but at least we'll get to do it with the next game. It does suck that we didn't get a Red 13 situation from Remake where, Vincent could fight alongside us as just a computer character kind of doing his own thing. So we could just kind of see him kind of operate how he might, function in the third game. But we did get a little sneak peek of him because we do fight him in Rebirth, of course, and get to see his Galian beast form. So obviously the monster forms and how that's going to function in terms of combat and stuff like that, it's going to be very interesting. In the original game, whenever you turned into one of the monster forms for Vincent, you didn't get to control him, right? He stayed that monster form for the rest of the fights and just kind of did random attacks or whatever, right? And I don't know if they're going to go that route in the third game because it'd be kind of weird if you turned into the Galian beast and then you just don't control him anymore. He just runs off into zone shit or whatever. That'd be kind of strange. So I assume we're going to be able to control the monsters. And are we going to have access to all the monsters? I don't entirely know. Are there going to be new monsters? Who knows? Something that I'm equally interested in when it comes to Vincent, or maybe in some ways even more interested in than just the monster forms, is his weapons. Because when you look at Vincent's weapons, even just the original FF7, or if you go to something like Ever Crisis, he has several different styles. I think he even has different kinds of guns in Dirge of Cerberus, if I'm not mistaken, actually. Something that I'm equally interested in when it comes to Vincent, or maybe in some ways even more interested than just the monster forms, is his weapons. If you look at something like the original FF7, even something as recent as Ever Crisis, or even you look back to Dirge of Cerberus, he has different kinds of guns, right? Which is unique compared to something let's just say, Cloud Swords, right? He does have the nail bat, which is a little bit different, obviously, in terms of, look. But mostly he just has a bunch of swords, and they all fight the same. Obviously, unique properties to each weapon. If you look at something like the weapon cores when it comes to Remake, or the weapon upgrade kind of system that they have in Rebirth, where you equip, materias, you can do kind of different builds of the same weapon, but essentially, they all fight the same, right? And they have a pretty unique situation with the character of Vincent, where all of his weapons should perform differently because they're different categories of guns, right? If you look just to the original game, he has several different handguns, several different rifles, and also shotguns. You don't even have to know anything about guns to know that those all operate and perform differently. Then if you get into Ever Crisis, you can see that he has a machine gun kind of weapon. He also has a crossbow, which I don't particularly want for the third game, but hey, if they do that, whatever. And then if you get into Dirge of Cerberus, you can get I think the Griffin is a machine gun kind of weapon or something like that. The point of this is that if Vincent does have this, kind of varied arsenal when it comes to the third game with his selection of weapons, they shouldn't all perform the same, right? A submachine gun doesn't fight the same as a shotgun. A rifle doesn't fight the same as a handgun, and you mix them all around, right? Submachine gun versus a rifle. They're all very, very different. And I hope that that's the case when it comes to the third game. I hope that they are very different in styles depending on the weapon that you have equipped. This is actually something I've talked about before on the channel, but I couldn't find the video. I've looked at a few of my Vincent videos. We don't have a ton of them, and I couldn't find where I've talked about this different kinds of weapons and how they may perform in, probably Remake Part 2 at the time when we would have talked about it. But it doesn't hurt to kind of revisit this topic anyways, since we're post-Rebirth, kind of gearing up towards the third game inevitably, right? My biggest worry with this discussion, though, is that when we get to the third game, that they just land on one weapon type for him. And his iconic weapon is a handgun, revolver, handgun, whatever. That's what we see him with. It's what's in his key art for Rebirth, right? I could see them doing that, just giving him 6 or 7 different kinds of handguns, and that's what they do with them, and that he just fights the same way with every gun. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt for now, that he does have a varied weapon type when it comes to the original FF7, Ever Crisis, Dirge of Cerberus. I'm hoping they'll do that for the third game, because it'd be a big disappointment if they didn't. Again, what I want from these varied weapon types for Vincent is for them to perform differently. What I mean by that is, for something like his handgun, it should be an all-rounder gun. It should be an all-rounder weapon that does, good damage, good fire rate, good stagger, I suppose. It doesn't excel at anything, but it's not bad at anything either. It's just a good, all-around weapon. We're obviously putting aside abilities and materia slots and all that other shit. We're just talking about how the weapon performs by itself in a fight. I think shotguns could have a lot of application because there's obviously a spread to a shotgun whenever you shoot it. So that could be crowd control for maybe just random mobs as you're exploring the world, but also particularly some boss fights where they might summon little minions to fight with them. The shotgun might be a good choice because you could be damaging kind of everybody at one time. Also, because there's a spread to shotguns when you're firing, there could be a bit of a risk-reward system where the closer you are to an enemy, the more damage you're doing. Obviously, more pellets are hitting them the closer you are. Whereas if you're across the map firing a shotgun, I think you should still be able to damage them. It would just be less damage because maybe one pellet's hitting them essentially, right? So it's okay, do I want to close the distance, get really close up on this boss, and just keep shooting with the shotgun? I'm in range for them to attack me, but I am doing more damage. I think the way you can handle like automatic weapons, whether that's submachine guns, assault rifles, whatever, is that they're a little bit less damage than maybe something like the shotgun or the revolver, but you're doing a lot more shots at one time, right? Like big magazines, 50, 60 bullets or some shit before you got to reload, whatever. And it's maybe like it builds stagger a little bit better than like say the handgun or the shotgun. I think it's like maybe the best way you could do that. But obviously have to balance it a bit, because if it like builds stagger too well on top of the actual abilities that you use while you're wielding the machine gun, it'd probably be too strong, right? You don't want to be able to like stagger too easily with this weapon, but it should just build like stagger a little bit better naturally than something like a handgun or a shotgun. The way you could do like rifles for Vincent is for them to be like high damaging weapons, slower fire rate, of course, because you got to rechamber a bullet essentially with a lot of rifle type weapons, and then like I think a little bit higher of a critical rate than like other weapons have. Obviously, this is something that you also have to kind of balance a bit, where it's not too strong, where you're not always getting criticals, but like let's just say like across the board, every weapon has like, I don't know, a 5% critical rate. Then sniper rifles for Vincent could have like a 6 or a 7 or an 8% critical rate, where it's just a little bit better, a little bit higher. You're critting a little bit more often with the sniper versus the other guns. Now the slower fire rate, I don't know what that is exactly. It obviously needs to be good. It can't be like you take a shot and it takes you a couple seconds to rechamber and then you fire another shot, because the damage has to kind of equal out to what the other guns do. Otherwise, you just wouldn't even really use the sniper. They can obviously balance this by doing like other kinds of rifles. If you look at like his original weapon list from FF7, he does have like a lever action rifle, and that's like a faster fire rate rifle. They obviously in real life have like semi-automatic rifles. They also have semi-automatic and automatic shotguns as well, right? But we're just talking about like the basic mechanics of these guns. When I'm talking about like a sniper rifle for Vincent, I'm thinking like a bolt action sniper that there's a little bit of pause between shots, right? Kind of falling down like another rabbit hole of how many weapons are each character going to have in the next game, and also when it comes to Vincent, if he does have these varied weapons, are they going to perform differently, and are there going to be variations of them? Would there be a sniper rifle and a lever action rifle? Would there be a handgun and a revolver? Would there be like a submachine gun and an assault rifle? I don't know. But there could definitely be some cool shit with that, right? You could have like the automatic weapons for Vincent are the ones that are a little bit weaker than the other categories, but they build stagger better. But within that own category, it could be like the AR is stronger than the submachine gun, but it has a bit of a slower fire rate, and it doesn't build stagger as good, whereas the submachine gun, less damage, faster fire rate, builds stagger slightly better. And you got to kind of decide between those two what you want to use, if you want to use that category at all. But again, that's a whole nother discussion at that point. And we don't even know if it's going to matter when it comes to the third game, because they might just do like 6 or 7 fucking handguns for him, and that's all we get, because they still got to like work on his monster forms too. I don't know if they're going to go that in depth with his regular weapons, if they got to like worry about 3 or 4 or 5 monster forms for him to turn into, and all the mechanics of that. I'm not really sure what route they're going to go as of right now, right? That's kind of the problem with not having Vincent be a playable character in this game. I don't know what to expect going into the next game, because they got to go all out, because he's only going to be a part of the third game, right? And we have yet to have anything for him in terms of like weapons and all that other shit. So I don't know what they're going to do. And the thing with the next game too is that we're going to be getting all of our characters' final weapons. And if they keep it the same as the original FF7, Vincent's final weapon is the death penalty, which is a rifle, right? So there has to be some level of variation to his weapons. It clearly would make sense for something like the death penalty to be fighting in a similar manner to whatever his default handgun's going to be in the third game, the Cerberus, the Quicksilver, whatever they have him use. Kind of it for the video, my dudes. Just want to have a little bit of a discussion on the character of Vincent when it comes to the next game, how mechanically he may work, depending on if they do different kinds of weapons. There's a part of me, just kind of back there in the mind that fully expects there to be just a couple of handguns or whatever, or however many weapons each character are going to have. I don't know if they're going to go the route of actually going through the effort of giving him like a handgun, a machine gun, a shotgun, a rifle, and them all actually performing differently. But if they go that route, they can do something pretty special with Vincent. That gives you like a little bit of incentive to use him, something that makes him very different from the rest of the party, outside of obviously his monster forms. But of course, that's where I pass off to you guys. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think they're going to go the route of giving Vincent his different kinds of weapons that we've seen him have in something like Dirge Cerberus, FF7 Original, even Ever Crisis? It'd be pretty weird to get to Remake Part 3 and him just have one style of weapon, because he's always had like a bit of an arsenal, right? So what do you think they're going to do? And if they do have these different kinds of weapons, are they actually going to perform differently? That's the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @ffvii. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.